I resented my husband. Doug and I have known each other a really long time. I really felt like this was a pivotal moment for us to fix something and to try and get it right. And this was really the inspiration for the book.
My guest today is Heather Boneparth, former corporate lawyer, co-author of the new book, Money Together, and one half of the couple behind the Joint Account newsletter, which helps thousands of couples talk about money every week. She left a 14-year legal career to join her husband at their wealth management firm. She's raising 2 kids in New Jersey, and she's about to take on a major home renovation. But this episode isn't just inspiration, we get into the actual numbers. Heather shares her income journey from her very first paycheck to now.
My first job was $81,000 in New York City, and I had $217,000 in student loan debt.
She breaks down what it took to walk away from the stable salary and the healthcare.
And so it was a very risk-on proposition for me to leave this safe 13, 14 years of a stable income and healthcare to join him.
We get into what kids actually cost, starting with the years she lived in New York City.
I was literally handing over like my entire paycheck to this nanny for the 25 hours a week that we had her. It was insane.
And why we get so angry about other people's safety nets.
Having financial support from a parent is an existential safety net. It is the privilege of opportunity.
I'm Ashley, certified financial planner, founder of The Fiscal Femme, and I'm asking the question everyone is already wondering. How do people actually afford their lives? This is How Do You Afford This? Welcome to the show, Heather.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to get into it. So I just will. You and your hubby run your own financial planning firm. You're authors of your new book, Money Together. You're raising 2 kids in Westfield, New Jersey. You're also renovating your home. Like, how do you afford this? Please tell us.
We afford it by having lots of difficult conversations over the years to really be sure that our priorities are in check. We constantly check in with one another. And I think most importantly of all, we have figured out what our enough looks like.
I want to talk all about that. How did you figure out what your enough was? And what does that mean?
It's a journey. This is not, look, when you learn how to have a better relationship with money, it is not a one-time thing and you're done, right? Especially when you're talking about living your life with someone else, having a partner, having a spouse, a family. It's a practice, and I think the perspective, not only from our business, but from our book and from my career pivot and from raising our children really and trying to model a good example for them and to really show them like what happiness and contentment truly is, because I am happy and content with so much in my life. It kind of gives you that perspective to say like, I don't know, like how much more do we really need than this? But it's not easy. I'm not going to make it seem like it's easy. Man, I have a messed up relationship with money. I wrote about it in our book.
I love that. And I feel like it's a practice, like, because when we get down to it, we see it, we know it, and then things can just kind of get us off track. Like, do you have any practices for bringing yourself back to knowing what's important?
Well, that's the thing though, right? Like you don't just get to get it right once and be done. We say this a lot because like I was that person, right? Like when we closed on our home here in Westfield, it was 10 years ago, actually 10 years ago right now in this time frame. It just happened, the 10-year anniversary of us closing on this house.
Happy home birthday.
Thanks. But like we really thought we had it all figured out. Like we had refinanced a huge amount of student loan debt. We had saved up like barely enough money to get into this house with a 1-year-old daughter. We got her into a daycare preschool program, like moved to a nice town. We thought we had it all figured out. Guess what? We didn't have it all figured out. Like you could hear narrator, they didn't have it all figured out. Who could have predicted a global pandemic? Who could have predicted... Right. But like, who could have predicted a dynamic swing in our income? Like I was at one point in time, the breadwinner in our household early on in our adult lives. And my stability gave Doug the opportunity to kind of like, be an entrepreneur, take risks and grow. But then like one day we woke up and he was earning 3 times my salary. And I think anyone would be lying to themselves to not feel as though that changes the dynamic in a household unless you address it, unless you're constantly talking about it. So this idea of enough, like me not having enough for a long time was directly tied to the shame of taking out 200 plus $1,000 to go to law school and graduating during the recession, being underpaid, underemployed, my legal career not really like going down the path that I thought it would. Enough wasn't just I want a bigger house. Enough was how am I going to make this right? How am I going to make my career right? When am I going to be able to go to sleep at night feeling like I'm doing what I was put on this earth to do? I mean, those are like big feelings. And I know that like not everybody has those like existential thoughts, but like, hi, only child, only grandchild, it's just, that is what went through my head every day for a very long time. And so it's a long winded way of saying, like, finding your way to contentment is a journey that requires a lot of self discovery, first and foremost. And then the
Mhm.
honesty and the perspective of looking around you and saying, like, I have everything I need. I have plenty.
I love that. You mentioned when Doug's income was 3 times yours and the power dynamic. In your book, which I wanna get into the inspiration for writing it, I love it. Talk to me about that. Like, what you talked about during COVID, you were a parent of 2, you took on most of the labor, physical and emotional, and, like, it made sense because he was earning, it made sense 3 times your salary, and I
It
think a lot of mothers and find themselves in that position. Can you tell us about that time? Can you give us any numbers around it? And how would you navigate it differently now, knowing what you do now?
Sure. I mean, so much of that came down to the messages that we were telling ourselves. And I would say more so the message that I was telling myself. Doug was not he was never a deadbeat dad, right? Doug was the other type of dad. He was the tell me what to do and I'll do it dad. And I think that we all know a lot of those too. It's just someone who just wants to be directed. And so it's not just physical labor, but the emotional and the mental labor, especially with 2 small children during that time. Like our daughters were 11 months and 4 years old when COVID lockdown began. And I was working full time as a corporate lawyer. And Doug was, navigating the uncertain waters of the market for his clients at the firm. And, a lot of it was scary times. And they, the firm needed a lot of him during that time. And I think when you look at whose time was worth more, it would be very easy to just say, well, he makes more money, so his calls take precedent to mine, right? It could even just be as simple of a thought as that, which is pretty much how it started. Like, well, whose job is really more important? Who's more important to keep happy? The clients of the firm or, Heather, corporate lawyer, like cog in this massive machine? Like, who is more important? And I think that that is incredibly reductive looking
Mm.
back, right? Like reductive of the situation because what resulted was almost a year of me reaching like the absolute epitome of burnout and starting to resent not only my situation, which, I already like I said, like I became a lawyer in a time where I carried a lot of shame, not just from my debt, but from not being able to ever really like have the legal career that I would have chosen had I not, had I graduated at a different time. So I'm already kind of like, I was in commercial insurance. Like that was not the path I thought I would be going down. So I'm already like, I'm in this legal job. Suddenly my husband's making a lot more money than me in a career that he's incredibly passionate about.
Mm.
And you just start to tell yourself that like, my time isn't worth as much. Obviously, my contribution to our family is not worth as much, so we need to prioritize him, and that's what I told myself, and it was a really damaging message, and it was damaging how much I did for him as well during that time. And when I realized that was, a year and a half later when I started to resent him. And it wasn't just resenting the job, resenting COVID, resenting the situation that like young parents were in. I resented my husband. And, Doug and I have known each other a really long time and we've worked through a lot in our lives, but I really felt like this was a pivotal moment for us to fix something and to try and get it right. And this was really the inspiration for the book was like no one talks about the shifting, ever shifting power dynamics over money in relationships. We talk about budgeting. We talk about what kind of accounts we should have. We talk about investing. And we even talk about, now we talk a lot about prenups. It's great. Like that we're having these conversations, but we're not talking about the way that two people have to marry their beliefs around money, their insecurities, the messages that they carry from their childhood, and all their hopes and dreams together, because that's what a partnership is. So I wanted to try and navigate those murky waters. That's how we ended up with Money Together.
And what did you, so like this happened like a year and a half later, you're like, I'm burnt out, I'm resenting everything. Then what? Like what happened?
Well, so we started having conversations about what the next chapter would look like for me, because I said to him, I said, we're reaching a breaking point. One of two things needs to happen. I either need to lean into my career and I could go try and become like high flying general counsel at some company I'm very passionate about, and your financial planning practice can become like a lifestyle practice where you stop trying to grow and you become the one doing the pickups. You start doing the mental load and more of the emotional labor. And I'm in the city 4 days a week. And that's just what it'll be. Or we need to talk about my exit plan of leaving this job and I joined the firm. Because the other thing that I didn't mention is like when you have an entrepreneurial spouse, like, I don't know, we kind of believe that like every business is a family business. Like you can't just stay out of it. I was moonlighting. My third job was Doug's business consultant to build our firm, to build his media platform, to do all of these things. Like, so I said to him, I'm like, we either need to give this a real shot or I'm done participating in the firm. I'm done participating in all this other stuff because I can't be I can't be three different people at the same time. It's killing me and it's going to kill our relationship.
Something that stuck out too to the conversation to me is that it wasn't only about the labor, it was about the fulfillment in your work. So there was
Absolutely.
the different parts of it. It was like very multi-layered.
Yeah. Very multi-layered. I mean, I think that for better or worse, I may tie too much of my identity up with my work. And I think a lot of people do. And so when you don't feel like you are, I don't want to say reaching your full potential because that's so like when you're not potential maxing, like I don't want to like sound like that. But like I just kind of like, I don't know. I kind of believe that when you're like passionate about something, so I was a journalism major in college. I always wanted to tell people stories. I wanted to use my storytelling skill to help people, to help people's lives. That's why I became a lawyer. That's not what I got to do as a lawyer. And so I think there was a piece of me that still felt like I wasn't doing what I set out to do. And when you are someone like me and you go to bed every night, you think about that. And watching my husband thrive and grow this, wonderful business and help so many people. And like, I'm the one that wants to be helping people too. It's really like, it goes from like, wow, I'm so happy that like he's doing this and I'm glad I get to help and I get to like, moonlight as the business consultant. And he has always been the first one to say, this is our business. This is, and he would tell anyone that asked, my wife is the reason I can even do anything. Like, but like it's all lip service until you take a big swing, make a big leap. Like, okay, you say this, you've been saying this for years, but guess what? It's time to, or get off the pot.
Here
So,
I come.
so that was about 2 years into COVID. And I think like a lot of like universe things happen from then on out. So what happened was so we kind of started like mentally pivoting around our finances around what it would look like for me to, exit. And I don't know if like, and he'll admit this too, like, I don't know if there would ever be a day that he would have said, yep, today's the day. Today's the day I feel comfortable with you leaving your salaried job that provides excellent health benefits for our family for the last however many years. Like, I don't know if that day would have ever come on its own, but my company did very abruptly ask us back to the office 4 days a week, which was more than I was going in before COVID. And so the deadline kind of made itself very clear because he and I both knew I wasn't going to start doing that again, after a couple years of being at home. So I think that kind of, I won't say it forced our hand, but it revealed, the date revealed itself.
I love that. Like it created the deadline for you all. And I really resonate with that. I had a situation with when I was working full time. It was like, when is the day going to come? And it was when there was just a new role too much that it was like, it's time or
Yeah.
you're not doing it,
Yeah.
Curious, like with you joining the firm, then were you able to take some things off his plate and then now he's able to help more at home, like outside of the fulfillment part, how did that balance get more even?
Oh, yeah. So we truly, truly threw the household responsibilities up aside their head. Doug is a completely different kind of parent than he was before. And it's not just from a time standpoint, even though time is really what this is all about. He owns the tasks that are given to him now from start to finish. And that's like that is not a unique concept to me. That's a concept from Fair Play by Eve
I was gonna
Walkley.
say, like, how you talk sounds so much like Fair Play, like
Well,
that you
I'm
all did
obsessed
that.
with her and I'm
Me
obsessed with
too.
Fair Play. And we interviewed her in the contribution section of our book because I'm like, there's no point in me reinventing the wheel. This is the wheel. Like,
Right.
but this one concept from Fair Play was so important to us as a family: conceptualize, plan, execute. Because Doug was there. Like he was willing to give his time. The thing that was killing us was that he wasn't handling tasks from start to finish. He was having me get everything ready, get it all up in a row, and then he would like walk it across the finish line. Like, and I that it wasn't really relieving me, especially when you start doing things like writing a book. Like, the type of time you need to write is very different than like answering two emails with the kids running around or like hopping on a call. Like, you need blocks of time. You need people to take responsibilities off your plate. So, like,
Yes.
we give the example in our book of how Doug became swim dad. And I think this is a great example because competitive swim team, I mean, you can replace swim with anything: soccer, gymnastics, whatever. It's a lot, right? A lot of emails. There's a lot of like ordering bathing suits. There's scheduling meets and practices and things like that. And when Doug became swim dad, he took all of swim. And I mean all of swim, to the point where I could with confidence delete the emails that I got from swim because he did everything from take her to bathing suit fitting, swimsuits fitting at the beginning of the season, to putting all the practices and the meets on the calendar, deciding which meets we would participate in because you don't have to do all of them. Didn't even have to talk about it. He just decided which ones she was going to go to. All I had to do was show up and cheer for my kid, like the passenger princess that I was. And
I
it
love it.
and but that's what it means to own a
Mhm.
responsibility. And so I think the more people understand that this is mental, almost way more than it's physical, that's where you really carve back that equity for yourself.
Makes sense. And the to have the brain free to do the creative work, to have the time and not have it all bogging down your brain or, missing things, forgetting things. It's really powerful.
Totally.
And you were talking about like, when are you ready to take the leap? Curious, like, and that you were the salaried person, right? You're like the stable income. What was the salary you walked away from? And did you take a pay cut in those first years when you joined?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, the salary, it was, I mean, I'm trying to think, is with it was like we had like a bonus tiers and everything. I made all in comp was over 200. But I think almost more importantly was that I provided the healthcare. My company provided the healthcare, which was, what that another $50,000-$60,000 worth of benefits a year on top of that. Uh,
Right.
and so it was a really, really big deal. And it was not something that we took lightly. And so when I say that we made a decision that we would reconfigure our goals around me leaving work, didn't mean that I quit 2 weeks later. We planned for over a year. We saved
Mm.
more money. We had built up, usually, I mean, we recommend usually to people in an aspirational way, if you can have 9 months of your living expenses in cash, that is a wonderful cash reserve to have on hand. But we had a year and a half to 2 years on hand when I left. That was how much of a float and a cushion we wanted to have between our business and our personal accounts, because it wasn't like I was just walking away from a salary job to go like start my own business. I was joining our family business, which inherently is volatile. I mean, it's not volatile like unstable, but any business that you own, there's no ceiling, but there's technically no floor either. You don't know what could happen. So it was a very risk on proposition for me to leave this safe 13, 14 years of a stable income and healthcare to join him. But we planned for it and we made changes in our lifestyle in the year or two leading up to it. And I think importantly, too, because you'll find this interesting, because I know we were talking about homes and home purchases and renovations, we were looking to upgrade our house before we made this decision. So we've been talking about moving. That was what, 6 years ago at this point. We had a realtor. We were talking about building a house in the town next door. The minute we decided that I was leaving, we consciously knew that that goal had moved far down the priority list. And this idea of me someday leaving my corporate job to either be entrepreneurial, write a book, join the firm, had moved up. So
Mm.
it wasn't, you don't abandon a goal, you just reprioritize them. So all of our financial decisions, we basically like reconfigured around the goal of having enough cushion for us to feel really good about me leaving.
So the curious, you mentioned like having a year and a half. Was there a target that you had, or it just was like, we're just going to do it until it's time, that you felt like that it was safe to make that leap?
Well, understanding like living expenses is important, right? Because it's not just right. There is no like magic number. Like I think that the idea of the numbers don't lie, but there's also like the psychological component. So like I said, I
Yes.
don't know if there would have ever been enough money that Doug would have felt 100% comfortable with me leaving
Yes.
this job, because, like part of the joy, I think, and, you know, I don't want to say part of the joy of his entrepreneurial spirit was knowing that he had my corporate safety net. But I think early on, like he was able to take bigger swings knowing that we had that. So
That-
would there have ever been a day that he was like, there's the magic number, it's enough? I I don't know, but I think that you do reach a point when you know what your living expenses are, you know you've got X amount of them covered, and anything more than that, like you can't really say with a straight face that this is irresponsible or like too risky at this point. Like at this point, like we've made, we've planned, the numbers don't lie, here's where we're at. And also I think like things don't need to be that black and white. Like we had actually said, let's see what it feels like for the first
Mm.
6 to 12 months of dropping your salary entirely. Let's see how our cash flow feels. Let's see like how everything feels. Because as a lawyer, like I could have always picked up some temp work, some like fractional GC work, some even like doc review work. I could have picked up something just to kind of like, you know, pad the cushion a little bit if we felt uncomfortable. So like I always remind people, it doesn't have to be like we made this huge decision, oh my God, now we're stuck with it. Like, no, you readjust. Like that's why, again, like communication and the practice of continually checking in on these things and like doing it with the numbers, with an honest conversation in a like distraction-free, stress-free time, sitting down together, like that's how you get to like, how do you feel? All right, well, our savings went down a little bit, but like, we're doing all right. Like it's actually like we did pretty well. And I feel good. Let's keep going with this. You don't need to go try and do any of that yet. Let's keep going. But you have to check in. It's the only way.
Right. And to know that the check-in is coming makes it easier to make that decision now, that you're not making it for the next 10, 20
No,
years.
yeah. Well, that's why we recommend to people, to readers of the book and to our clients as well, that like money dates, which are, these types of conversations, you should have quarterly, because quarterly is enough time between meetings that you can see and feel real meaningful change. Like you actually have enough data to really like understand it, because 1 month could be an anomaly. Like we all have expenses that come up. Like if it was like my daughter's birthday month or something, you're throwing a birthday party. That's not, maybe wouldn't be the same, but over quarter to quarter, you can start to see trends a little bit better. And you don't want to do this too often that you end up like canceling it because you're like, oh, we're busy. I'm tired. It's September. We'll just get it in October. Like quarterly is far enough apart that you're not going to cancel it. And then you're also going to see the meaningful change over the course of the quarter.
You mentioned lifestyle changes, and I think that could be really hard, right? It's easy to like lifestyle increase. It's hard to decrease. What are some of the things that you all changed?
Let's see. For us, so what's interesting was during that time, and really, Doug and I were never like big vacation. We never spent a lot of it. We do now, which I think which is interesting in itself, because that I would say has been our biggest lifestyle increase as our income
Mm.
has gone up. But we are both completely comfortable and know that it would be the first thing cut. if we needed to dial back. Like we still hold it in this like discretionary, like, isn't it great we can take these vacations? But if things got a little tighter, they'd be the first thing we cancel and nobody would be upset about it. But so back then, it really wasn't any of that. I would say when the kids were little, it was discretionary childcare, meaning like babysitters on the weekends to go out to dinner and like, because, if you're hiring a babysitter and you're going out with a few couples, it could easily be a couple $100 night. And when our kids were little, like that was like, we just moved to the suburbs and you're like meeting other young families. That was like the currency of our time. Like, let's all like, we just have to make it through the week because we would have plans like Friday night, Saturday night. We were like making our way around the restaurants in New Jersey. You know what I mean? Like, but that was like hundreds of dollars a month between the babysitter and the nights out. So I would say that was a major shift. We both happen to really love to cook, me especially. So I also made sure that we were not wasting food. We were eating all the food, that we were cooking more and not creating waste. I was like doing my best to pack lunches. I didn't really like order the school lunches that were only being half eaten anyway. At like the preschool, I was packing lunch every
Yeah.
day. And so, and those were not like new practices to us. Those were practices that we brought back from the early stage of our relationship, from when we were both just like saddled in student loan debt. We could barely afford our apartment. And I was packing us like the last 2 slices of turkey on a sandwich, like the thinnest, saddest turkey sandwich ever in New York City to like afford our apartment. But like, you don't lose those skills, right? Like, and I'm not above them either.
Right.
Right. I don't think we ever, I think honestly that, wow, this is the first time I ever actually have said this. I never felt above any lifestyle. Like I never felt above dialing back my lifestyle to something that it once was before. I don't think I'm better than what we were at 30, in the sense
Yes.
that like, just because we have these things now, I am perfectly fine not having them again.
It's incredible. I think so. A few things come up for me. I think it's very powerful to know what would be first. When Justin's got laid off, we didn't necessarily scale back yet, but we were like, if you don't get something soon, this is what we could do. And that felt very powerful to know what's first. And I
Absolutely.
and I think too, like with your lifestyle changes, uh, incredible to not feel above that. I think that's really an interesting mindset, like a mindset place to be. And then also to know what it's for. Like you are doing this for this career that you feel passionate about. That makes it a lot easier to cook at home. And how did the conversations go with like the friend couples? Like, did you have to have conversations like, hey, we're not going out right now? Or did it how did that go?
I don't even think you have to. Like, I think you can just pivot the way that you spend time together,
Mm,
Like, we love to host and I love to cook. So, like, I would just invite people over here. Like, we don't need to go to the steakhouse that's 45 minutes away. We can also just go buy steaks and make steaks and invite our friends over. Like, you don't have to sacrifice time together. But I'm also like, I would never be above having that conversation. Like, we wrote a piece for our newsletter that actually was the best performing piece of all time. It's called "No, We're Not Coming Skiing with You." And it was about the fact that Doug's from Florida. I'm from here, but I'm like a warm weather creature. I don't really like to ski. And we have no interest in our family ever becoming a ski family. It's just not something that interests us, and it's too expensive to just go along with it. Oh, it's fine. Just come up to Vermont for the weekend. Like, it'll be fun. You can go to the lodge. You can hang out. I'm like, I don't want to go to the lodge. Like, it's not that I don't think that sounds fun. It's that that's going to cost me $2,500 for the weekend. And that's just not how we choose to spend our money right now. And I love you and I hope you have a great time. But catch us for the summer version of whatever that is.
we're
Uh,
going to the beach with you.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to the beach. Like that's fine. I said, I want. It is not me poo pooing on the way that you spend your money and your time, but it's just not something that we're interested in, and that has to be okay. That has to be okay, and real friends understand that. And I think that if there's people who don't, that's a different conversation. That's a friendship conversation. It's not a financial conversation.
Right. And in your framing of it too, it's I'm not choosing to spend my money on that because that's not important to us. It's not like I want to go, I just can't.
Well,
It's a very different feeling.
that's what I oh man, I that actually really bothers me when people do that. And they're like, I really wish I could. I can't, my husband will kill me if I say yes to this. I'm like, but like, do you even really want to go? Like I've heard that knowing that I've heard that language knowing that they don't really want to go. And I'm
Right.
like, you should just say, I don't think that that's really for us right now. We've got a lot going on and I don't, why don't we find something else soon? It's just not going to be in the works for us this year.
Yeah.
You don't have to feel bad. You don't have to like feign disappointment every time. You could just say, I'm not interested, but I love you and catch me for the next one.
Right. So a big question my audience always has is around the cost of kids. I think it's like the top thing people are interested in. We're talking about your reno, all of it. To give context for those conversations, can you give a range or share your household income?
I would say, and again, like we own our own business, so it's like it's hard to really kind of like get too into it. But right now, like probably high six figures.
And how has it shifted over the years? Like it
Well,
sounds like there was right. This yeah. Go ahead.
well, I made my first job was $81,000 in New York City, and I had $217,000 in student loan debt. And
So that was when you were an attorney.
that was when I was 25. That was when it was my starting salary. And my husband was making, I think his starting salary at the same time was like $60,000. And we were living in New York and he had $100,000 of student loan debt from his MBA program as well. So it's not just income, but it's like debt to income that we've had to overcome. And, it's been when you own a business, there's great years. And then, there's ebbs and flows. There are years that were more. We took a big hit at one point in time that like drew down our income substantially for 1 year. And it took 2 years to get back to like where we were but we got back there in a very different way, in a way that felt less like reliant on like the one client who had left, if that makes sense. Like, so like we had built something better back. We'd come back stronger. And so I think like kind of like being willing to accept the ebbs and flows of a business, but know that you, one, are okay, two, that you're in control enough of your lifestyle and of your, cash reserves, and that you've created enough hedges in your life to like be able to withstand, again, not volatility, but the fluctuation in income is really important when you own a business. But yeah, we started out in it was pretty tight. Like when I mean like I was going to Fairway and like putting things back from the grocery cart, like at the checkout. And we had to keep it really tight for a long time. And when we had our daughter, Hazel, we were still living in the city. And I like knew it would be expensive, but I hadn't really like understood what that would feel like until she was born. And I had to go back to work after 12 weeks. And we could only afford a nanny for like 25 hours a week. There were no daycare options. Like there wasn't even an option. Like, I mean, where we were living in the city, like there was one daycare. It was 25 blocks away and like there were no spots, so we had to get a nanny. And the nanny was like, I wish I remembered how much money it was, but it was a lot. And we could only afford her 25 hours a week. And so Doug had to make up the other 15 by telling his boss that he was going to work from home and she was a baby. So he would like take her around the city on his calls and like walk around. And it was like, we did what we had to do, but it was really tight. It was really tight. And then when we moved out to the suburbs, we were able to get our daughter into like a preschool program, which was a little more stable in terms of the childcare that was being provided and also stable in terms of the cost. So that was a big change for us, but I am by no means minimizing the cost of daycare either, because incredibly expensive.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I remember when we were in the city, we moved before my son was born to Hoboken. And I had put him on a list for a daycare. And like, I remember he was probably 1.5. And I got an email like, he's off the list. And I'm like, well, it's a little late for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not helpful anymore.
No, and like unless you know people who already know, I mean, I was the first of my friends to have kids. I mean, in certain like professional circles. I mean, I was 30, but you'd think I was like a teen mom because I was like, I was
In
the
New York.
first, right, in New York. I was the first by like years. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know I should have called a daycare like the day that I got pregnant. I had no idea. And so it was really hard because I felt like when we were in the city, I was literally handing over like my entire paycheck to this nanny for the 25 hours a week that we had her. It was insane. And I know I know that, it fluctuates. It depends based on your geographic region, but there's no question that childcare is a massive expense on people's ledgers. I think for many, it's not even really like closing the gap. It's not even enough, which
Right.
is the craziest part.
Do you think that's probably the biggest expense for parents, or like what
Yes.
are you? Yeah.
Yes. Childcare without question, biggest expense, especially in those early years. I mean, eventually hope, if you're in a situation where you can send your kids to a public school, I mean, people would say that some of those expenses come back to you, but I would argue that they're still off every summer and you've got to put together a patchwork of private care and camps and things like that. The school day ends at 2:30 to 3 p.m. and people's work days
Right.
ends at 5 and 6 p.m. Like even with public school, you're still always financially solving for the kids unless you are so fortunate to live within, a stone's throw of your family village. I mean, which many of us don't anymore. So
Right.
without question, that's one of the biggest expenses and challenges that face families. There's other stuff too, but that's the big solve for sure.
And through the firm, your work, you have a unique look into how people are making it work. Do you have an idea? You see those stats. It's like X $100,000 per kid. Any idea what it actually costs? And how do people know if they can afford a kid?
Oh, it's such a big question.
I
I,
know.
I mean, I don't know if there is an answer of how do you, I mean, I don't want people to get too caught up in the numbers when they look at can I afford a kid? I would say to you, I'm going to try and I'm channeling Doug through what he would say to clients sitting across from him. He'd say, he always says, love finds a way. And
Yes.
so in his mindset, like you do find ways to make it work according to your financial situation. Now, some people may receive the tough love from him or that say maybe you're not living in the right maybe there needs to be a discussion about like where you're currently living if the childcare is beyond your income or is beyond what your cash flow can sustain. That's a serious that's a serious question you have to ask yourself. And you can do your research beforehand and understand how much a nanny costs, how much the daycare or preschool options cost. And you can then really get a really intimate understanding of your cash flow to see, hey, am I just maybe temporarily derailing my retirement savings goals to handle this childcare for these, the early years of childcare? Or is this something where we're going to be like chasing and we're going to be taking on consumer debt just to stay in, for example, this apartment, to stay in the city? Like it's not black and white. There's a lot
Yeah.
that we see people do. I mean, we see people do nanny shares all the time. People are getting way more creative. And, you can do a mix. I mean, I think I was kind of one of the first in our area to kind of pursue what I call like the after school nanny. So not like instead of doing because what we felt like what our preschool was offering in aftercare, it has a set expense. But what we needed, it was still like not good enough because we were commuting in the city. This was back when Hazel was little. It was worth 3 days a week on the days that I had to go in finding care just for the hours of, let's say, 4 to 7 p.m. And then I didn't pay for aftercare, but we paid for this sitter, but it was only a couple days a week. But what we got out of it, the value of the time that we got, me being able to stay in the office without running and the panic and the whole thing and getting that time back at work was incredibly worth that little bit of extra investment. And it was just that the money was way better used for our lifestyle and our job than just saying, oh, I pay for 5 days a week of aftercare that costs X dollars a month. So I guess the point of me sharing this is that you really want to be constantly reevaluating your situation. I mean, year to year. Like, don't just
Yeah.
assume because you needed aftercare, you needed, 9 to 7 while your kids was 1 to 3. Like, you may not need that anymore when they're 4 or 5. Like, it is that dynamic that every year you need to be reevaluating both the childcare needs and your needs from a job standpoint. Like, have you built up seniority? Do you have any more flexibility than you did a couple years ago? Maybe it might not be what you want to do, but if you're trying to save a little bit of money, maybe those 2 days a week, you can each take turns. You do one early pickup, your spouse does the other. There's lots of ways to really like tailor the situation around your family and your needs specifically, and not just get caught up in like whatever the offering was that you've accepted 3 years earlier. That's probably
Right.
like my biggest tip.
Like get creative and personal
Yes.
versus what
Yes.
everyone else is doing. And I love the love will find a way. I really feel like most people who become parents don't know how they're going to pay for it, and that there are expenses like childcare that are so much more expensive at the beginning. And but like you mentioned, that we think relief is coming, and then like the youth sports or the camp or the costs just keep kind of hitting
The
you.
co the costs do keep hitting you, but I think that the challenges change. It is not all
Mhm.
the same challenge. I think when your kids are little, you're living in the high touch era of parenting when
Right.
you need physical man-to-man coverage on a child. And yes, like, and I'm not diminishing the costs of having an 11 to 14-year-old. And look, I send my child to sleepaway camp. That is incredibly expensive. Uh,
Yes.
but I just mean that again, like the costs are more dynamic than just saying like this is how much it costs per year. It's always going to be this age 0 to 18. They're dynamic, they shift. Every kid is different and every family situation, and you don't even know what your job's going to look like 3 years from now. So,
Right.
one of the most, important things we always try to tell people to keep in mind is just have the perspective that we don't know what next year will bring. And that's a little scary in some respects, but it can also just be relieving, I think, for
Yes.
parents who feel like they don't know if they can take one more day. I always said like there was like things that each one of my kids have done, and like they've gone through phases that have been really difficult. And I've always felt like literally the day that I'm like, I cannot take any more of this, the next day it's over. Right?
It's like,
Like that's
I
parenting
can't
in
take
a
it.
nutshell. Yeah.
Let's do that earlier.
Are you there, God? It's me, Heather. I cannot take one more day. This must end now. But it's
I
true.
promise it's real.
I promise
No,
I really can't take another day.
and to your point on the man to man, like it is very different to have a kid coming home at 3 o'clock who is in kindergarten versus like a fourth grader who can read a book or do their homework
Absolutely.
on their own, or it's a very
Absolutely.
different story for sure.
Absolutely. And like there might be a messy middle where you're not really sure which it is. Like we were in that boat because we still had an after school sitter when our daughters were like 8 and 5. And I mean, she wasn't the greatest sitter. Like it wasn't the greatest year with the sitter and everything. But it was also the year that I realized that we didn't need that type of man-to-man coverage anymore in those after-school hours, and so, like, I was also, like, overpaying someone who wasn't really able to give the kids what they needed, and now our daughters are like, my daughter's turning 11 at the end of this year, 11 and 7, and I can most days if as long as we don't have an event somewhere that we're physically cannot be home, I could easily go pick them up and say, "Hey, I've got a call at 4 o'clock. You guys need to do your homework. You know what you need to do, and don't
Right.
bother me until it's over." And so things do change.
Yes, definitely. And you mentioned like the folks who are a stone's throw away from family, like curious about your safety nets. We all have different levels of them. Are there things in your life that have made it easier to build wealth over the years or to
My
take this leap for the business?
No, we had not received financial support from my family, but I did receive from my late grandfather money for college for undergrad. That was where I mean, of course, here and there, and my parents were very generous and helped pay for our wedding and things like that. But we do not receive ongoing financial support. We have not received any since law school. Yeah, since that time, like our adult lives, we have been. Yeah, I think a lot of what Doug and I. Very. It's kind of interesting. Doug and I both have divorced parents, and it happened in very different ways. Like my parents divorced when I was much younger, his divorce much later in life. But we really not only pride ourselves, but it was incredibly important to us for different but personal reasons that we were able to stand on our own 2 feet together. And that's no shade towards anyone. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I think it's wonderful when you see intergenerational wealth gifting that happens like during the lifetime now. Like you shouldn't just have to like wait till
Mhm.
somebody passes away. If you have wealth that you want to share with your kids, I think it could be a beautiful thing. But it was really important to us that I think that makes a lot of what we do, just makes us feel really good about it.
Yes. And curious, something I encounter with the work with how do you afford this, whether it's like the podcast or I'll go on the street and someone shares like they're in law school and their parents are paying for their apartment and people get really angry
Yep.
with other people receiving support.
I was really
Any idea what's going on with that? Like where
yes,
that comes
because
from?
yes, because I was that person. I was bitter. I was bitter. Not only in law school, but like after law school when I graduated during like coming out of the recession, the people who and still to this day, like they're living their dream careers because they were able to take like unpaid internships
Mm,
that used to be jobs, but at the time they were like, "Well, just come hang out here for a year and maybe if our money comes back, we'll give you a job." They could afford to do that because their parents were like paying for their rent. So, and they said, sure, stay. It's a great opportunity. I mean, I think people who don't have that, it's really easy to be jealous of somebody else's existential and financial safety net because it's not just financial safety net. Like having financial support from a parent is an existential safety net. It is the privilege of opportunity. It is the
mhm,
privilege to know that it will all work out because they will never be left on their ass. And I think
right.
so it's not just having money for the apartment. It's not just having, getting a nice gift here or there. I think the thing that people are jealous of is the safety, right? And that security because to have that is like, wow, what a gift, right?
Right. And it can feel so unfair. Like
Sure
thinking about
does.
that internship you were talking about that someone wouldn't be able to have that experience. But then on the flip side, like that is something I would love to be able to not specifically the internship, but to have my kids know that they have that existential safety net. So it's like, yeah, it's such a balance there.
It
It's
it it
interesting.
it is such oh my god, it's such a balance too. Like, right, I hope my kids feel like they have the privilege to try. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not something
Right.
frowned upon. Like, I'm jealous of that. Like I was. So, but you don't want them but I think, you have to also, like, know your kid and know that there's a difference between saying, like, the pipe is open and it'll be open with endless flows of like Scrooge McDuck money, like for the rest of your life, versus like, I'm going to help you go after your dream. Here's what this looks like. And I'm going to equip you with the money to do it, but in a very like controlled and informed way.
So
That's
they
very
still
different.
try
Right. That's
and
very
care.
different than just saying, like, if you run out of money, call me,
Right.
like it's very different.
Yes. Very different. And you all are really transparent, right? You
Yeah.
share in your yeah, in your newsletter every week to thousands of people. Transparency is really hard too. Like, do you think that the I guess I'm curious, what do you think makes it so hard? And is it related to this, like this jealousy or the judgment of the different safety nets? And yeah, I'm curious what you think makes transparency so hard.
I think there's a lot of shame around money in general. And I think that people have, again, like money's never just money. People carry their money beliefs from their culture. They carry money beliefs from their religion, from their childhood experiences, their parents' experiences with money. So when we talk about it, we're not just talking about the vacation that somebody took. You know what I mean? Like we're talking about much bigger concepts that are simmering underneath the surface. And I think that makes it really hard for people. It's easy to talk about that proximate thing. It's a lot harder to talk about the feelings that are underneath of it. And so that's what makes talking about money so hard. And I can't tell you the number of couples that aren't having transparent conversations around money. And I don't just mean spending, but I mean like truly about the way they feel about money. Like
Mm,
we have interviewed people who have been brought to tears by the question, do you have enough? And they've said, I don't think I'll ever have enough because I don't know what's ever going to make me feel satisfied. And that's a big thing to admit. That's not a
right.
number. That's not a number, That's a mindset.
It's so powerful to know that before you've strived for 60 years to
Yeah.
get to something you'll never achieve, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, a lot of me finding healing and, healthier relationship with money because I carried a lot of shame, a lot of shame around my law school debt, around my career not working out the way I thought it would. And a lot of that's not because my situation looked much different than like millions of other, people that were in the same, millions of other like elder millennials that were in the same position as me. My shame came from my personal story. It came from the way in which I was raised. It came from the messages that I was taught around what women should and shouldn't do. And you know, you can't judge the stakes of another person. You don't know them,
Yeah,
and so I don't know. Like it's not easy to be transparent, but it can be very healing because when you do reach a point where you're like, actually, the reason I did all of that was because I was trying to resolve these feelings. And now I've resolved those feelings. So I've untethered them from money. And I
yeah,
don't make my financial decisions anymore in service of like some really like messed up beliefs and fears that I have from childhood. So it's not like oh well we make more money now and everything's fine. No, like the thing that makes it fine is that I've untethered my self-worth from my income, that I feel more in control of my finances, and that I believe in optimism and I believe in possibility. And I didn't believe in that for a really long time.
that's beautiful.
Thanks. Thanks.
Yeah, and I do think so definitely within a relationship, it makes so much sense that being transparent is important, and then but also I find because, what we're talking about, this there's so many levels of safety nets, things that aren't fair, and I think so much of our lives, we look at social media, we compare ourselves to people that have just had very different circumstances. And so I think transparency can be really helpful for having some compassion for ourselves, for realizing, oh yeah, no wonder it's been more challenging for me. Or, oh, like this is what someone else has done that's so inspiring. I just find there's in not just seeing like the pretty facing Instagram photo, like what's behind it is very empowering and just so helpful.
Yeah, that's always the goal, right? Is like and I like to tell people all the time that like we don't always get it right. We get it wrong a lot. We're not done getting it wrong. We'll make a mistake again soon. I'm sure we will. Like nobody's perfect, and not only mistakes, but like things don't always go the way you plan. Like we're at the front end
Yes.
of this renovation that we want to start. Like who knows? Who knows what's going to happen when they bulldoze down one of our walls? We don't know. Like
Right.
no one that's but so I always just try and say like you can only plan for what you like we plan for what we know and we plan for what we don't. I mean you just have to kind of be open to rolling with it and saying like maybe that wasn't the best decision and forgiving yourself for that too.
Yes. That's so true. The book is all about money and relationships. I want to give you 3 sets of people and see what advice, if you're allowed to say advice, you would give them. So, like,
We'll give them
someone
tips.
tips, there you go, tips. Okay, so what tips would you give for someone who is dating, right? They're maybe seeing the same person now, like, what early conversations should they be having?
Well, one, you should not wait until you're married to talk about money.
Mm,
You should have a look under the hood long before you're engaged. And it's never too early to talk about money. I'm not saying that you have to ask for their income and their account balances on day one of dating, but there's ways to understand not only people's lifestyles, their risk tolerance, there's ways to understand where they came from and their values. Those are things you should be trying to ascertain, and they are all related to how people approach money today. So
right.
you should not wait. It is never too early to begin those conversations.
Love that. What would you tell someone who just had kids? So they're navigating like what we are talking about with childcare, leave, the labor division at home. What would you tell that person?
Oh my God, how much time do we have? I would tell them a few things. I would tell them that time is our greatest currency.
Mm,
Time is what matters most in our life. And time buy in between you and your partner in terms of valuing the time you spend earning money and the time you spend caring for the people you love. always remember that time is the most important thing. And honestly, one day you're going to look back and you're going to realize that because your kids are going to be older. So there's that. Also, that we contribute to our household in more ways than earning money. So back to like that idea, just the idea of what it means to contribute, that is so not limited to who earns what.
Right.
And just remember that. And I think when you're a new parent, to me, like I feel like the most important thing, and it's still true today, is like you only know what you know. You're a new parent, you only know the new parent experience. No amount of books are gonna help you. You only know your experience. And
Right.
it's just a life of constant motion. The hardest part of becoming a parent is accepting that nothing will ever stay the same ever again. Like the family you have today isn't the same family you have a year from now because you're going to have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old and you're going to have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. That change is it's so seismic for you as a person. And it really requires like a mental shift. And that does all relate to your money because you have to be flexible with your money and flexible with where you prioritize your goals and what you need to do to kind of like make whatever that year's situation is work. I mean, that's just life in constant motion.
Love that. And then someone who is in a long term and also deeply feel that the constant motion and ever changing.
Oh, yeah.
What would you tell someone who's in a long term relationship? Maybe they're like a few years from retirement and they haven't been involved in the money conversations. And they're kind of like, um, I want to know what's going on now. I don't know if we're able to retire and when. Like, please help.
Tell them that it's never too late. It's never too late. And if anything, I would tell them, I'd probably give them some hard love because if they haven't been involved that long, they're probably not saying, oh, wow, now I should get involved. We see it more like, oh, well, I trust that they've worked it out. They have all of our affairs. And it's more of that. And I would say this isn't about trust. It's about what happens if something happens. What are you going to know what to do if something happens? I tell them to begin with access. I think people like access is like the most underrated first step when it comes to getting
Mm.
involved in your finances. And that's true for women who have kind of like disengaged from the financial processes of a household at any point in time. Access is first. Do you have all the apps on your phone? Do you have the banking apps? Do you have the password saved? Do you have your own password? Um, Gain access first. Because if it is readily available to you, the barrier to enter is so low and you could start seeing it, familiarizing yourself with it. That's my best first step. It's like so silly, but it's like you'd be shocked how many people just don't have access. Make sure you have access to everything first.
Makes perfect sense. And access, then you can know what's in there and what you have in each account.
Yeah,
I will maybe we have to do a whole episode on your reno that you're doing because
we
we're
totally,
running out of time.
well, we
Um,
can because it hasn't even started yet. Like we're still talking to the architect. Like we're like, this isn't even like happening yet. So like
okay, perfect.
we could do home ownership whenever.
Okay, great. What is something about your finances people would never guess?
That I have a greater tolerance for risk than my husband does.
Mm,
I'm like a cowgirl. I come from like like if I had my way, like I'm like a yeah, let's go. Like he is a very low tolerance for risk, and I don't. And you would think that I think a lot of people tend to think that it's like the opposite, but
right. And because he was the entrepreneur first.
exactly,
And yeah. And
exactly.
maybe too like gender stereotypes like
For both
yeah,
reasons, yeah. People
right.
tend to believe that he'd be the one to say we should invest in that. And it's no, it's usually me.
What are you working towards affording next?
A major home renovation.
Yes.
There are no other goals right now. No, but in transparency because of, what this podcast is all about. You know, we're very comfortable with the way that we're funding retirement now. We've increased our contributions to our daughter's 529 plans. Like we've accomplished a lot of things we wanted to accomplish on a regular basis and we're comfortable in our lifestyle with the way that we've made those increases. So aside from this big decision we made, which was that we're not going to move, we're going to stay in our home and do a major home renovation, like that's what we're trying to do. It's a big deal. It's not a little deal.
Do you have a timeline? Like when are you hoping it's complete?
I am hoping that next fall it will be complete. Like I'm hoping that we get through the architectural phase and like have our plans finalized by the end of the summer. We've got to go to our town for some zoning variances. I'm hoping that that happens by the middle of the winter, early spring, and we find a contractor that isn't, I don't know, I'm saying something nicer than what I was going to say. Well, we'll find a contractor to do a great job, and
Positive, yes.
and yeah, and that next summer we can, maybe the girls when they're in camp would be a great time to be uncomfortable in this home, and we could move out if we have to. We don't know if that's a thing yet. We're going to see. And hopefully next fall. Yeah, hopefully.
Something that stands out to me in your big financial decisions, like whether it's the house or you joining the firm, is that they sound very big and they're big investments, but you plan for them far in advance and are really thoughtful about them. Like this, we're thinking years ahead for this. Same
We
with
try.
your switch.
We try. And I think the most important thing is not only to plan far out, but to just be nimble. Like the money that we've saved for the home renovation was the money that we put aside to buy a new house. Like, and now we're not, and a lot of that was the same money that we set aside as a runway for when I left the firm, and we didn't end up needing it because we had kind of made a few little lifestyle adjustments and like didn't go on a lot of vacations for a couple years when I had left the firm. So like, it's not that we're not so rigid that it's all like this bucket. We don't have like, it's not so rigidly earmarked that we can't be nimble and recognize what the top priority is right now. So, and it put us in a good position for it, I think.
Right. So the money can change purpose.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Heather, for coming on and talking about relationships and money and giving us an inside look into your own relationship as financial experts. Where can everyone find you and support your work?
Oh, well, let's see. Our book is called Money Together, and that's available anywhere books are sold. If you are so attracted to the sound of my voice, you can also listen to it on Audible. I narrated the audiobook.
Oh, that's so cool.
It was really cool. But then also we write a weekly free newsletter called The Joint Account, which is over on Substack. And so you can find us there as well. And our firm is Bonafide Wealth, based out of New York City.
Amazing. Everyone go follow and read the book Money Together. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to How Do You Afford This? If you love this inside look into how people are actually affording their lives, follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We have new episodes dropping every week, and trust me, you do not want to miss them. And if you're enjoying the show, please share this with a friend. You'll get credit for introducing them to their new favorite podcast, and you'll be helping me on my mission to make crafting a wealthy life more accessible, more transparent, and a whole lot more fun. One more thing before you go, if this got you fired up to chase your own money goals, I hope it did, come hang out with us in the Money Club. It's a community of ambitious women building wealth together, and on average, members put an extra $10K toward their money goals in the first year. Come see what it's all about at thefiscalfemme.com/money-club. See you next week.